In an equipment yard lined with parked tractors, a reversing tractor moves backward while a hidden blind zone forms rear section. Inside a crowded factory aisle, a suspended pipe suddenly shifts out of position as pressurized flow escapes into the surrounding area. On a narrow roadside construction trench, a loose wheelbarrow shifts from the upper edge and rapidly moves into the trench area. Inside a warehouse aisle, movement begins around towering glass sheets. Then the stacked load suddenly shifts across the aisle. At a vehicle inspection bay, the service area sits still. Then a sudden pressure surge rapidly spreads through the bay. Never handle pressurized cylinders, fuel systems, or compressed air equipment near ignition sources without proper inspection, isolation, and pressure control procedures in place. Inside a crowded scrap workshop, a cutting torch reaches a gas cylinder, and pressurized gas suddenly releases from the container. Do not cut, weld, or heat a gas cylinder unless it has been fully isolated, depressurized, cleaned, and verified safe for hot work. Inside a busy production room, movement near a rotating machine suddenly turns a routine moment into an active equipment hazard. Never operate near rotating equipment without proper guarding, safe separation, and machine isolation procedures in place. Loose materials, tools, and nearby movement should always remain clear of active machine components. Beside a roadside utility pole, a crane truck operator guides a concrete post into position when sudden electrical activity appears near the overhead lines. Avoid moving cranes, poles, booms, or elevated materials near overhead electrical lines without maintaining minimum clearance distances and using a designated spotter at all times. Inside a tire warehouse, a forklift operator lifts a stacked storage rack when the elevated load suddenly loses stable alignment. Never raise or move elevated storage racks unless the load is evenly balanced, fully secured, and positioned within the forklift's rated capacity. Inside a crowded restaurant kitchen, workers move around an LPG setup when sudden ignition activity appears near the cooking area. Always inspect LPG cylinders, hoses, regulators, and nearby ignition sources before operating cooking equipment in enclosed workspaces. On a crowded drilling platform, a suspended personnel basket suddenly shifted out of alignment during a routine transfer operation. Maintain balanced loading, secure lifting points, and constant communication before any suspended basket is moved around active drilling equipment. In a quiet workshop corner, loose material moves too close to a spinning angle grinder, and the tool suddenly shifts out of controlled movement. Keep loose clothing, straps, and fabric completely secured when operating high-speed rotating tools, and maintain a stable working position around powered equipment. Inside a tire shop, a routine inflation check suddenly changed as pressure rapidly escaped from the tire system. Use tire safety cages, remote inflation lines, and pressure-rated equipment whenever servicing high-pressure truck or industrial tires. Inside a warehouse panel rack, one loose board shifts out of place, and movement rapidly spreads through the stacked materials. Stacked materials must be secured, supported, and handled from outside active movement zones before any board is moved. Check rack conditions, brace unstable panels, and remove materials one section at a time so instability cannot spread through the stack. At a busy gas station pump, sudden ignition appears near a delivery motorcycle during refueling as heat and flames spread across the forecourt area. Fueling areas must stay free of ignition sources before and during refueling. Shut off engines, keep hot surfaces and electrical faults away from the pump. Inspect fuel systems regularly, and stop fueling immediately if fire or leaking fuel appears. Inside a crowded factory floor, a suspended load suddenly shifts downward the moment its support chain is released. Load stability must be verified, secondary support must be in place, and the movement zone must be cleared before lifting chains or rigging are disconnected. Keep the load landed, blocked, and fully supported before any attachment point is released. At a busy roadside intersection, a moving vehicle suddenly contacts the extended boom lift beside active traffic and redirects the platform sideways. Establish protected exclusion zones, visible barriers, and controlled traffic separation before positioning boom lifts, cranes, or elevated equipment near active roadways, because passing vehicles can rapidly enter nearby work areas during roadside operations. On a narrow city street, a forklift forces a massive curved load over the curb. Then the load suddenly shifts and destabilizes the lift path. Oversized or unstable loads must not be moved across curbs, slopes, or uneven surfaces without secure rigging, a planned route, and spotter coordination. Keep the load low, move slowly, control the travel path, and stop the operation immediately if the load begins changing position or alignment. Inside an auto workshop, activity continues around a raised vehicle when the entire car suddenly loses stable alignment on the lift. Lifted vehicles must be supported only after the lift points are verified, locked, and backed by secondary safety stands. Confirm the vehicle is centered, check the lift arms, engage mechanical locks, and keep the bay clear until the setup is stable. During welding work in an industrial container, sparks scatter beyond the work area. Then hidden materials begin reacting to the heat outside the container. Hot work must not begin until nearby combustibles are inspected, cleared, shielded, and monitored throughout the job. Use fire watch, spark containment, proper ventilation, and post-work checks so stray sparks cannot reach concealed combustible materials. During a high-pressure fire hose test, the charged line suddenly redirects sideways under heavy reactive force as the hose path moves rapidly across the ground. High-pressure fire hoses must be operated with proper stance, clear communication, secure anchoring, and enough trained personnel to control the reaction force before water pressure is opened. Any charged line that begins to whip should be shut down from a safe position before the hose path is approached. Pressurized fire hoses generate powerful reactive force as water exits the nozzle at high velocity. If grip, footing, or coordination becomes unstable, the hose can rapidly redirect movement and destabilize the control path. Water under pressure becomes a moving force, not just a firefighting tool. Proper hose handling, stable footing, and coordinated teamwork are critical during every pressure test. During a port crane unloading operation, a suspended combine harvester suddenly loses stable support as the load rapidly shifts toward the dock. Oversized suspended equipment must not be moved until rigging integrity, load balance, and every attachment point are confirmed before the lift. Keep surrounding work zones clear, use qualified riggers, and stop the operation immediately if the load shifts, tilts, or loses stable alignment. On a drilling floor beside heavy pipe handling equipment, a pressurized line suddenly opened and released drilling fluid across the work zone. Pressurized drilling lines and fittings must be inspected, secured, and verified under pressure control before nearby work begins. Keep clear of active pressure zones, monitor hose and fitting condition, and shut down pressure before adjustment, repair, or close inspection. A compact tractor climbed onto a flatbed trailer on a gravel driveway. Then the entire truck and trailer combination suddenly began moving downhill. Heavy equipment must not be loaded onto a trailer until the tow vehicle is secured, the trailer is balanced, and wheel restraints are set. Chock the wheels, set the brake, confirm the hitch connection, and load slowly on stable ground before driving equipment aboard. As the tractor's weight shifted onto the rear of the trailer, the tongue weight and balance changed rapidly. Without enough braking force or wheel restraint, gravity and momentum caused the entire setup to continue moving downhill. Equipment loading can become unstable quickly during weight transfer. Stabilize the trailer, secure the tow vehicle, and control movement before loading begins. Inside a busy construction warehouse, movement near an elevated roofline suddenly turns into a rapid loss of stability above the work zone below. Elevated edges must be secured with guardrails, lifelines, and controlled access before any activity begins at height. Keep the lower work area clear, mark exposed edges, and verify protective systems are in place before elevated access begins. On top of a rail tanker beneath overhead power lines, sudden electrical activity appeared across the roofline within seconds. Isolate electrical sources where possible, verify clearance from the tanker roof, and keep tools, equipment, and movement outside the energized work area. High-voltage electricity can arc through air when conductive tools, equipment, or nearby positioning enter close proximity to energized systems. Metal surfaces and elevated structures can increase the transfer path for electrical energy during contact or near-contact conditions. Overhead power lines can energize an entire work area without warning. Verify clearance distances, de-energize circuits, and control elevated access before beginning work. Inside a warehouse, a loosened component on an industrial unloading machine suddenly moved out of position during equipment activity. Stored energy must be isolated and moving components must be secured before industrial unloading equipment is serviced, adjusted, or cleared. Lock out the machine, block, or brace movable parts. Verify zero motion, and keep the service area controlled until all mechanical force is stabilized. An ATV climbs the loading ramps into a pickup truck bed. Then the ramps suddenly shift out of position as the rear tires lose stable alignment near the tailgate. Loading ramps must be properly rated, locked in place, and aligned on stable ground before equipment moves into an elevated truck bed. Secure the ramps to the vehicle, keep the approach straight, and use slow, controlled movement so the tires stay centered on the ramp path. As the ATV climbs, its weight shifts and transfers force back into the ramps. If the ramps are not secured, they can move away from the tailgate and destabilize the rear tire path. Unsecured ramps can become unstable under normal loading force. Lock the ramps before loading begins. Inside a construction site excavation zone, an iron girder suddenly shifts downward into the active lifting area during a material transfer operation. Suspended steel loads require controlled work zones beneath the lift before lifting, lowering, or repositioning begins. Check all lifting connections, rigging points, sling tension, and load balance before moving structural materials. At a pipe loading yard, a suspended bundle of steel pipes suddenly loses stable positioning during crane movement as the unloading zone rapidly fills with shifting material. Suspended pipe bundles require a controlled work zone before crane movement begins, with sling balance, tension, and load security verified at every lift point. Keep surrounding work areas clear, use qualified rigging checks, and stop the lift immediately if the bundle shifts, rolls, or loses stable alignment. Round steel pipes can shift inside a bundle when lifting angles change or restraints lose tension during repositioning. Once load balance became unstable, gravity and rolling force rapidly redirected the pipes outward across the surface. Suspended pipe bundles can become unstable quickly during lifting operations. Inspect rigging carefully and keep all personnel clear of active load movement zones. At a fabrication yard, cutting heat builds inside a sealed steel vessel, and the tank suddenly releases pressure from within. Enclosed tanks must be purged, vented, and atmosphere tested before any hot work begins near sealed sections, trapped material, or unverified contents. Keep ignition sources controlled, verify safe readings, and never apply heat until pressure and vapor conditions are fully stabilized. At a loading area, reinforced concrete poles ride across forklift forks. Then the load suddenly shifts and rolls out of stable alignment. Use proper attachments, blocking, straps, slow travel, and a controlled route so the load cannot shift, rotate, or move outside the transport path. Round concrete poles can roll when the load shifts during travel or turning. Once the center of gravity moves beyond the fork support area, gravity and rolling force redirect the poles away from stable positioning. Round loads can move with heavy rolling force. Secure, balance, and verify every load before transport. At a roadside construction site, a boom lift suddenly loses stable positioning, and the raised basket rapidly shifts through the air. Boom lifts must be set on stable ground with outriggers placed, checked, and fully supported before the platform is raised. Inspect the surface, confirm level positioning, and keep the lift away from soft edges, slopes, or unstable roadside ground. Inside a steel frame construction site, a suspended beam swings through the lift path, and the load suddenly redirects beside the open frame. Lift paths must stay fully clear whenever suspended steel is moving overhead or being positioned by crane, because a swinging beam can rapidly change direction or move outside its intended travel path during positioning. Suspended beams carry momentum and can swing when rigging tension shifts or load balance changes. Even a small angle change can redirect heavy steel through a wider movement arc. A moving load can change direction fast. Keep exclusion areas clear whenever steel is lifted overhead. On a driveway woodcutting area, a loose log lies under a chainsaw. Then the saw suddenly redirects upward away from the timber pile. Never cut unsecured logs without stable support and full control of the saw's cutting path. Do not operate a chainsaw when the timber can roll, shift, or place unstable pressure against the guide bar during the cut. Beside a highway power line project, a crane hoists a utility pole. Then the machine suddenly loses stable positioning during the lift. Utility pole lifts must stay within rated crane capacity, stable ground conditions, approved boom angle, and safe lifting radius. As boom angle and load radius increase, leverage multiplies force against the crane's counterweight and outriggers. Once the load center moves beyond the crane's stability line, the structure can rapidly lose balanced support. Heavy lifts become unstable quickly when balance and load radius are ignored. Plan every lift around stability, distance, and ground support. Inside a utility bucket beside energized power lines, a tool moves too close to the minimum clearance area and sudden electrical activity appears near the conductors. Conductive tools and equipment must stay outside minimum approach distances around energized power lines during all maintenance work. Do not rely on visual spacing alone when working from elevated buckets near active electrical systems. Inside a truck service bay, a mounted tire assembly sits under pressure. Then the wheel suddenly releases stored energy across the bay. As pressure builds, compressed air loads the tire, rim, sidewall, and retaining parts with stored force. When structural integrity is lost, that force rapidly redirects outward through air movement and shifting components. As pressure builds, compressed air loads the tire, rim, sidewall, and retaining parts with stored force. When the assembly fails, that force releases outward through air movement and flying components. Compressed air hazards stay hidden until pressure control is lost. Use restraint cages, inspect every part, and stay outside active pressure zones. Inside a factory workshop, an electrical pole stands beside an active furnace. Then sudden electrical activity appears across the heated work area. Electrical equipment near active furnaces must be treated as energized until power is fully isolated and verified safe. Keep clear of accessible electrical components, damaged insulation, and heated equipment, and allow only qualified electrical work under controlled isolation. At a construction site, a massive concrete form panel hangs from a crane. Then the rigging suddenly loses stable alignment, and the panel rapidly redirects through the lift path. Suspended concrete form panels require inspected rigging, controlled balance, and a cleared lift path before any movement begins. Loose rigging, uneven chain tension, or shifting balance can rapidly redirect heavy materials outside their intended movement path. Large form panels carry uneven weight and strong rotational force while suspended. If rigging tension changes, gravity can rapidly redirect the panel through a wider swing arc. Suspended loads can become unstable quickly during lifting operations. Inspect the rigging carefully and keep the lift path clear. On a residential roofing job, a heavy bundle suddenly shifts toward the roof edge. Then the load catches near the tip and remains partially suspended above the lower area. Safety principle: heavy roofing materials should never be pushed, thrown, or slid from elevated surfaces without a controlled lowering plan. Use proper lowering equipment, clear the lower work area, control the material path, and keep roof edges free from unstable load movement. At a scrapyard baler, the compression chamber remains energized, and the press area suddenly begins moving under hydraulic force. Baler access must happen only after full lockout, isolation, and zero energy verification. Industrial balers can retain hydraulic force even when they appear idle. If stored energy is not fully isolated, the compression system can rapidly return to motion. Stored energy remains active until it is fully isolated. Lockout, verify, then enter. At the drilling rig floor, a traveling block hangs overhead. Then the suspended assembly suddenly shifts downward through the rig floor movement path. Suspended drilling equipment requires a fully controlled work zone beneath active hoisting and lowering operations before rig floor activity continues. Beside a loading bay, a tanker truck releases vapor under pressure, and the surrounding yard rapidly fills with expanding vapor. Pressurized tanker systems must be isolated, depressurized, and verified safe before any opening, venting, or disconnecting begins. Pressurized tanks store energy inside the vessel and connected lines. When a fitting or valve opens unexpectedly, gas or vapor can expand rapidly into the surrounding area. Stored pressure can rapidly spread vapor through a work area. Isolate, depressurize, and clear the yard before opening the system. During unloading, a dump truck bed stands fully raised. Then the hydraulic support suddenly loses stability, and the loaded bed rapidly lowers. Raised dump beds must be treated as stored mechanical energy until they are fully lowered, supported, and secured. Keep surrounding work areas clear during unloading. Use approved body props when service access is required, and never rely on hydraulic pressure alone. Beside a parked trailer, one step into the shadowed walkway suddenly revealed an uncovered service area below. Floor openings, maintenance pits, and trenches must stay covered or barricaded whenever active work is not taking place. Shadows, blocked sight lines, and uneven walking paths reduce depth awareness around open floor areas. Large vehicles and surrounding equipment can obscure exposed floor transitions until movement reaches the area. An uncovered opening can disappear into the surrounding workspace. Use rigid covers, visible barriers, and clear walkways to keep floor hazards controlled at all times. Outside a building, a ladder stands beside energized wiring. Then sudden electrical activity appears across the wall near the wet ground. Ladders must stay clear of energized wiring unless the power is isolated and the work is controlled by qualified electrical crews. Use non-conductive equipment and keep bystanders away from the electrical work area. During truck cab repairs, the raised cab hangs overhead. Then a slip tool suddenly redirects the repair position near the suspended structure. Raised truck cabs must be supported, secured, and accessed only from stable positions during repair work. Use approved cab supports, keep footing steady, control tools before applying force, and maintain clear positioning around elevated vehicle structures. A raised truck cab stores heavy gravitational force above the repair area. A tool slip can suddenly redirect balance and shift movement closer to the elevated structure. A raised cab is stored weight. Support it, secure it, then work. During a roof panel lift, the suspended sheet hangs steady for a moment. Then the entire load suddenly rotates and redirects outside the intended lift path. Suspended roof panels require a controlled lift path and stable positioning before crane movement continues. Maintain clear work zones around the load, control rotation with tag lines from a safe position, and stop the lift immediately if the panel begins moving outside stable alignment. High on a tower facade, one exterior section suddenly shifts outward, and glass with cladding material spreads downward from multiple floors. Loose facade panels, cracked cladding, and exterior building damage must be inspected, secured, and isolated before the surrounding area remains open. Wind pressure, vibration, and weakened anchors can rapidly destabilize exterior materials at height. Tall buildings flex under wind, temperature change, and structural movement. When facade connections weaken, gravity and air pressure can pull exterior panels away from the building. Exterior damage at height can become unstable quickly. Secure the facade before surrounding areas are reopened. At a construction site, an excavator bucket digs beside a trench wall, and the soil bank suddenly shifts outward in a large ground movement. Trench work requires proper protective systems and controlled equipment distance before excavation continues. Use trench boxes, shoring, sloping, or benching as required. Keep heavy equipment back from the edge, and clear the trench if soil movement becomes unstable. Inside an office, the room sits calm. Then a sudden pressure release spreads debris and broken material across the floor. Pressurized industrial equipment needs maintained safety systems, protected distance, and controlled exclusion areas around high-pressure operating locations. Boilers store heat and pressure inside sealed systems. If containment integrity is lost, stored energy can rapidly redirect surrounding materials outward through the area. Pressure systems can become unstable quickly. Keep distance, maintain controls, and protect the surrounding area. On a roadside construction site, a suspended concrete load hangs under tension. Then the crane cable suddenly loses stability and the load rapidly shifts downward. Lifting cables must be inspected, rated, and matched to the load before any concrete lift begins. Do not lift unstable or improperly secured materials with worn cables, weakened slings, or unverified lifting gear. At a steel storage yard, a massive coil suddenly moves out of restraint, and the heavy roll rapidly redirects across the loading area. Steel coils must be blocked, chalked, and restrained before anyone enters the loading area, because once a coil begins moving, its weight and round shape can rapidly carry it across the yard with powerful rolling force. Steel coils carry major rolling momentum because of their weight and cylindrical shape. If restraints loosen or the surface slopes, gravity and rotational force can rapidly accelerate the coil across the ground. A loose coil becomes moving mass. Secure it first, then begin loading operations. Inside a drilling rig floor, a suspended component suddenly loses stable positioning overhead and rapidly shifts into the active work zone. Inspect lifting points, secure loose tools and assemblies, and maintain controlled exclusion zones beneath elevated drilling equipment throughout the operation. On a quiet production floor, energy suddenly releases from a machine, and intense light spreads across the room in an instant. Industrial equipment must be isolated, ignition hazards must be controlled, and the area must be verified safe before any chemical or electrical work begins. Electrical faults and volatile vapors can rapidly generate heat and expanding gases inside enclosed spaces. Once energy release begins, pressure and thermal movement can spread through the area within milliseconds. One uncontrolled energy release can rapidly affect an entire work area. Beside a supply truck, a heavy material bag suddenly shifts from the raised bed, and the unloading area turns into an unstable material zone. Heavy material bags should not be thrown from elevated truck beds during unloading. Use controlled lowering, stable footing, team handling, or mechanical assistance so materials move safely from the truck to the ground. One hard shift on the steel delivery rack suddenly redirected the pickup truck near moving structural beams. Transport long steel materials only with balanced support, secure restraints, and unloading areas fully clear of vehicles and pedestrian traffic. Long steel beams generate strong forward force once weight and movement begin shifting them loose. Uneven loading and weak restraint points can rapidly redirect stored movement through the load. Secure every beam with rated restraints and balanced load positioning before transport. Unload structural steel only with controlled equipment and a fully managed work area. Inside an automotive workshop, pressurized liquid suddenly spreads across the floor as movement redirects from the nozzle through the service bay. Store and handle pressurized or liquid-filled containers away from active work areas where leaks, tipping, or unintended liquid release can spread across walking surfaces. Don't forget to share what you learned today in the comments. Your insight could save a life. Take care.